overall, I mean, what we sometimes forget in this overall scenario, artificial intelligence. There's really a very old law by Amara. We overestimate technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. And this is really from the 1960s around. So this is not new, this is very old. The reason why he was seeing this pattern is that technology has a compounding effect. One advancement in one technology area will advance other areas. And now you have roughly the conglomeration of large data sets, computation powers, and sophisticated architectures. And this is really the reason why AI is advancing tremendously fast now. I mean, some people talk about general artificial intelligence, forgetting one big step to mention. The field was found by Alan Turing, and his first publication was 1950, meaning we have done many decades of research to get a first small breakthrough. Yes, in 2022, ChatGPT scrambled really our beliefs. But it was not something that was started 5 years ago, it is something that started 1950. And also, the thing that, in my opinion, strangely get forgotten is that the boss at Microsoft really said some years ago as the guiding principle for Microsoft, we are pursuing AI so that we can empower every person and every organization and institution to achieve more with AI. It is like people believe this is just happening 2 years ago. No, it happens some years ago. Also, the practice of responsible AI was founded in 2016. So in 2016, Microsoft was telling governments, be aware, you need soon AI regulation. And roughly in 2023, they blamed Microsoft, how can you release this nice tool software? Yes, we told you, we see a trend in 2016 that we need AI regulation. But these things are normally getting forgotten because what is another legislation. Furthermore, we really focus too much on the artificial intelligence. Let's really step back, what is human intelligence? And we really forget this, but when you are small, when you are developing, when you are a child, you learn from experience. You see things, you hear things, you are able to develop a language because you hear it from your parents. You are adopting beliefs to make decisions out from your culture. And roughly the same thing does artificial intelligence. It learns from experience. And in the context of large language models, it learns from the World Wide Web. The thing that is now really the game changer is that we are roughly now in an explosion of artificial intelligence. So I call this a digital species. Artificial intelligence evolves alongside us. And it will also roughly learn from every human, because roughly every human is creating data. If this is something good or bad, this is not something at this point in time to judge. It is just what is happening. You can, at the same time, you can ask, why is a bush fire burning something down? Yes, some things are really just happening, if we like it or not. And the same is roughly the adoption of artificial intelligence. Furthermore, I mean, in software development, we know that we have certain techniques that are extremely successful. I mean, there are multiple studies that extreme pair programming is very successful to get high-quality software. And still, not every company is adopting it because there is a high cost associated with this operating model. Because you are roughly paying 2 developers doing one task. And the thing that is now happening with AI is you have roughly now somebody alongside you. You have your programming buddy. And while this might still sound strange to experienced developers, this is something that is heavily happening also in education. If you go to the Asian regions, you will see that they have a plethora of apps on their smartphones to help your child learn, to get better at the schooling task. It's like a teacher companion. And this principle that artificial intelligence works alongside us is roughly, to a certain degree, for many jobs in the future, the new normal. It sounds really shocking, but to be honest, being in a company like Microsoft, where you are testing these things on a daily basis with your own people, you roughly see the benefit. It is also about the whole efficiency process. When you really just look at plain numbers, how much productivity do we get in the industry per year? This was roughly going flat over the last decades. Meaning, we have been talking about efficiency gains that have been in the range below 1% per year. Now, when you just go back to the pair programming example, if something like this technology, artificial intelligence, makes your developers around 5% more productive, what does this mean on a cost basis? This is a tremendous increase in productivity. Also, very much mostly forgotten but hated, you pay developers not to do coding most of the time. I mean, when we are in university or if we do it privately, when we say we go do coding, we code roughly 100% of the time. Once you're really in a company, there is a plethora of things that you can call planning, administrative, or just the rules of a game that are not coding. So overall, we really should think about what does this mean from a platform perspective. It is always good to have something that scales really with the number of developers that you have. Because you don't want team A and team B different using different software. You also need to keep in mind security, like things like code scanning. Because, yes, humans make errors. And errors means also that you might suffer later. And this is not meaning that somebody on purpose makes a mistake. It just happens with the human nature. And you might also have regulations, depending on the industry, that sometimes mandates that at least 2 persons must review a code to accept it, and then you need a granular access system that enforces this. It is not about, we have a policy, 2 people looking at it. No, the law mandates in certain industry, in certain countries, that you can prove 100% that your developed code was reviewed by another person before it was going into the product. Also, we really look for productivity gains in the overall setup, and this is really the ease of use of the overall software. And we really want to see this in the end as a collaboration tool. We have heard the infinite versus finite game. It is about collaboration because in the world today, not one person develops the gigantic one software. It is the teamwork. And on top, yes, there is a small piece called AI. But this is not necessary for everything. There's a lot of various levels that play together in software development. Nevertheless, we have done also a nice study together with Accenture, and I'm personally saying, take the numbers with caution. These are very impressive numbers, how much more something like artificial intelligence can make your code development system more effective. To be very clear, junior developers will benefit much more than a senior developer with 30 years of experience. But keep in mind, when you just look about simple things like what is your daily rate on development cost per person, if you then can get a tiny amount of productivity gains in 5% compared to the licensing costs, this is really, sorry to say, a game changer. If you are not using it, your competitor might use it, and he might be in the very soon much faster and more price competitive than you. I even would say that in the future, when a company says, I'm a bank, I need software, yes, depending on the demand, you will get external developers, but you will roughly say, this is your AI assistant and this is your GitHub. That you already have an internal GitHub where all your code development happens is normal in our time. And in the near future, that you augment any developer with an AI assistant will be the new normal. But the strange thing is really when you ask them about positive impacts. So it is not only about being more productive. It is really like things like, I feel I'm in the flow. If the flow is really correct, yes or no, this is another metric. But also they are like, I feel less frustrated because I'm in my coding IDE, in my graphical user interface, and I can directly get help. I don't need to go to the browser to Stack Overflow, or I don't need to get to another colleague for a coffee. I can get already a first advice while I'm stuck. Also, when we just look at from a practical perspective, you roughly use comments, so the things that you want to achieve to get the code. And this is roughly on a basic example level. It is not like very sophisticated, it's really just like validate each address. And there is a prediction on what the next line of code will be in conclusion. But it can be even much more complicated. When you look at something like this, you have on the left-hand side some code, and you say explain it, transform it. And it takes a moment because also the AI is not super fast in certain circumstances. And out of this, it then will generate the new code. What you actually see here is highly sophisticated refactoring. Why I make this statement? On the left side, you have COBOL, mainframe code. On the right side, it is Python. Meaning you have now done a code conversion where you roughly don't find humans to be able to do it. Because your COBOL developers are normally 50 plus going to retirement, versus your Python developers are coming from university. I'm not saying that you now must transform your COBOL legacy code to Python. I'm just saying you get now some very cheap advice for refactoring. And this can be also done from other languages. It can be done from Java to Python or C#. It is not always high quality, perfect, depending on how much less examples you find in a language, but it helps tremendously. And really, this is a refactoring task. This does not mean that there is after this anything solved. If there is, let's say, that we have called technical debt, this is still the same technical debt because it just transformed it from one language to the next. It was not saying, make this better, faster, whatsoever. Also, Rob really made in the briefing something that is nasty. He was asking, please tell us about the challenges, limitations. And there are 3 general ones that you should be really aware of. When I say training data impacts the AI, you, or better say, we use for this type of training public source code. which does not mean that the source code is good or bad. It is just there as it is. It also means that there can be mistakes, that there can be problems, that the AI might also learn. Another thing, something like an AI assistant is not a compiler. So you might have certain code dependencies that are not easily resolvable on the generative level because you advise the AI on one task. Software is a combination of multiple tasks. And the third thing is really, sorry, we are talking about artificial intelligence, not magic. We are not talking about mind reading. Nevertheless, there are also really some common questions that exist, and there is really something like a Copilot Trust Center to find answers. So, limitations. Yes, can't give any assurance that the code is bug-free, sometimes suggest insecure code. Keep in mind, there are people outside that on purpose want to make unsecure code in GitHub, that a developer fetches this unsecure code, that later there's a backdoor in your software. Remember the XYZ case recently with Linux. Unthinkable some years ago, but really on purpose bringing wrong code to the community. And yes, this can be trained and used. Also, the very famous one. Do you use our data for training? No. Very simple. There is a data processing agreement under GDPR. If we would use your data for training without consent, each company would be a GDPR case. So extrapolate the potential legal costs. Is it to automate and replace developers? No. It is about making them more efficient. And the best really is, for me, the intellectual property side. If there is free code under a licensing rule, we can learn it. And yes, you can incorporate this licensing code. That's why you should do code scanning for intentional violations of licensing. But the better the developer is, the less likely this happens. Also, in short, there is really a copyright commitment for Microsoft for Copilots, officially announced by the Vice President of Legal. So, if you really get in a copyright issue, Microsoft makes a commitment to help. If it is a licensing infringement, this is something else. To be clear, AI hallucinations, having wrong dependency with something like this is expected how the AI is designed. So just keep in mind, AI is not perfect because it learns from us and we are also not perfect. Nevertheless, there are really some clear guidance on best practice for coding prompts. Clear instructions, split up big tasks, and really test, test, and test like before. AI is not taking away your testing, it just roughly enforces it. And some of the simplest advices have the dependencies open, because you might have the same type of function, multiple types in your code base, but you want now to have a direct dependency fixed. So have it open. This is one of the most simple advices that a colleague was giving me. So keep in mind, it's really about context, intent, clarity, specificity. The better you get at prompting, the better it is, but your developers need to learn to correctly prompt for source code. With this, I would like to thank you.